Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video I am painting a unicorn using primarily blue colors. I'm going in to start with Winsor & Newton's aqua green color, and I picked it because I haven't used this color in a while and I really like it. It's very pretty, and even though it's called aqua green, it does look like a lovely turquoise blue. Now, I'm starting this painting by going in no sketch, no form, just a loose, atmospheric, and powerful wash. I'm going in now, adding some Daniel Smith Lunar Blue to help give some depth to my painting. I also like the Lunar Blue because it granulates and separates, and one of the undertones is kind of a turquoisey color, so it goes nicely with this aqua green. I do have my board up at an angle, and I am using some rough Arches 140 pound, and it's about, I think like 20 by 14. And I did record this actually a while ago, and this was before I really understood how to get the camera to do what I want. And I'm just gonna let you know now, I lost some of the footage, but only at the very end. But it still had a lot of good tips and tricks in here that I wanted to be able to share it with you. So you might have seen that some purple was introduced in that upper right corner. That is a color by Rockwell Art called God's Back. And look at that drip, and it's, oop, there it goes. And I wanted that. I love having these drippy water texture drips just because it really shows the fluidity of the medium. Now, even though I am going in just with a lot of color, I've got a size 3 squirrel quill brush because it holds a lot of water, and since I'm covering such a large surface, I do want it to hold a lot of water. While the paper is still damp, it's not sopping wet, but it's still wet, I'm adding some silk jacquard salt to give me some lovely salt patterns. And I'm putting it only on the lower portions of the painting because I want it to create like dust is being kicked up as the unicorn runs. Now, I do want to say that even though I am going in with a lot of color and it looks like I'm just winging it, I do have a plan of what I want to do. I have left some areas white, and that is because since I am painting with all of these colors, I'm painting what is technically a white unicorn, but I'm using the surrounding colors to create form and shadow. Now, after the painting has dried, I'm picking out shapes that I've left in the wash. The great thing about leaving some areas white, and I left them pretty intentionally, even though I didn't sketch anything, I'm like, this is roughly the shape of a head, and I can always adjust things later by creating more shadows by adding more paint, whether I do that in the painted area or the white area of the paper. And one of the things about when I paint in this technique is I use a lot of negative painting, which is one of my favorite ways to create form. So I'm starting with the nostrils just because I found that I had an area that looked like it'd be really good to put that muzzle area. And so whenever you paint like this, if you can find like a landmark or a place that you know that you can easily place something, then start there. I'm going in deep with some of that lunar blue because I do need to create that separation from the background, and so I'm either going to have to do that by leaving areas very light or making them very dark because a lot of the surrounding area is a mid-tone color. And for this, I opted for going dark. I've pulled out another round brush. This is a Princeton Neptune size 10 round. I like it, it's nice and soft, it holds its shape well, and if you are someone who does not want to use natural fibers, this would be my recommendation for you, is the Princeton Neptune series. And I'm also going to throw it out there, I am not sponsored by anyone, so anything I tell you is what I use and what I recommend. No one's paying me. However, brands out there, if you're looking to just give artists some money, your girl's right here. Gone in now with my favorite brush. If you've been here for a while, you know that is the size 8 round silver black velvet brush, and I love it because it has that nice pointed tip. And you might have seen me using my hands to measure things out. Since I don't sketch, I measure using other landmarks. So I measured what was the top of the nostril to the bottom of the muzzle, and how many of those segments did it take to make it to an eye. And so I used my fingers to just count like 1, 2, like 3.5, and then put in an eye. And I did put my painting in the upper left corner so that you can see what this will eventually become. After I let that eye sit for a second so that it was damp and not soaking wet, I used a curved damp brush. So my brush was clean and it was fairly dry because I wanted to lift that pigment in a swooping motion to create the rounded form of the eye. And once again, I used the muzzle as my measurement to then measure up from the eye to start putting in the ear. And one of the great things about going with a technique like this is it really teaches you how to see. Now that sounds silly and maybe like I've been smoking something, but hear me out. It allows me to measure shapes against shapes, so it helps me. Like, have you ever painted and or drawn and you start doing things and the proportions are off because you're painting based on how you think something looks? Well, when you go at this where you're measuring a feature based on the size and shape of another feature, and you keep doing that over and over and over, it helps train your eye to get proportions right. All right, now I'm back up at the top of the unicorn's head, and I am starting to, with a super light value, placing in where that hair is going to be flying. And this is how you can create movement. If I had the mane just sort of at the side, going straight down nice and still, that would suggest that the unicorn is stationary, it's just standing. But by having those light, wispy, curved motions in the hair, I'm saying there is movement. This unicorn is moving. And part of painting in this loose style, having lost and found edges, leaving some bits to the imagination, really do create that feeling of movement, that I'm trying to capture something that cannot actually be captured. And I can only give enough of the information before it's gone. Another thing I'd like to point out is notice how saturated my painting is in that upper corner versus the colors in my video. They look muted and dull. That's just because of the lighting I used. I painted this during the winter rainy season, so I don't have a lot of natural light to work with. I live up in the north and we don't get a lot of sunlight at this time of year. So I am using a lamp, but that does wash out the colors. So the colors of the actual painting are much closer to that beautiful, powerful blue in that upper left corner. Now, as you paint, whether you sketch first or not, usually you'll have to jump around the painting. So I'll paint the muzzle, then I go up to the eye, then the ear, back down to the muzzle, because I need certain areas to dry a certain amount before I work more. If you try to keep working an area that's too wet and the techniques that you are using are not meant for working very wet, you can disturb the pigment, it can create these blemishes and mud, and it just makes it look like you made a mistake. And so it's a really great way if you want to test your patience. So I painted negatively again by putting in some broken lines to suggest where the neck is on this unicorn. But I did it pretty lightly because if I decided, oh, I didn't do that right, well then I could just go in with darker pigment and correct it. But once I did that in a fairly light tone, I was pretty happy, and so I went in with the darker lunar blue color. And so with watercolor, you can even just put clean water on a surface, make sure you like it first, and then bam, go in with some fresh, juicy tube pigment, because I like to work fresh from the tube. It lets me cover great amounts of area, as well as I can get really saturated pigment. All right, moving down. Painting negatively again, I kind of just use my brush. So even though we don't draw with a pencil, I will draw with my brush. And I drew out where that like muscle is, and then I bled it away. But then I brought some of that shadow into the leg. And then to differentiate the body from the background, I am adding some of that God's back purple. And one of the reasons I like to paint that way, where I drag some of the outside into the subject when I'm negative painting, is it keeps it from looking like it's a cutout form. Like, have you ever seen something where it's nice and well done, but it looks like you just took a piece of paper and cut something out and stuck it on top? Whenever you put all of the lines in like that and have that complete separation, things can look copy-pasted. And so by dragging some of that background color into your subject, letting there be this ambiguity of lines, it really brings it all together more cohesively. And I'm getting distracted now because I want to point out, look at those salt patterns. Those are beautiful. I love using salt. And it really is a thing that you have to practice. Your climate matters. The kind of salt you use matters. I typically like to use kosher salt now, but at the time I used the silk jacquard salt, and that actually worked really well. It's a very big salt, and so I found that I don't always get the best patterns, but on this particular painting, it worked for me. So right now I am painting in some of the shadows on the neck, and notice where I'm holding my brush. I am holding it at the very end. This allows me to paint loosely, and because if you like go up by the ferrule as if you're doing a lot of detail work, that's fine when you're doing detail work, but I am nowhere near the time to do details. I am still putting in form and shadows, and I don't need to be too precious. And if I want my painting to have movement, I need to have movement. So I am standing up. I am using my whole arm. When you paint details, typically you are painting from the wrist, almost as if you have a pencil in your hand. But if you're going to be covering large areas and you want it to look loose and atmospheric, paint from your shoulder. Do your movements from the shoulder. Obviously, you'll probably want to move your elbow a bit, but that wrist is going to be fairly stationary. And of course, yeah, use your fingers to do little flicking motions. Sometimes you'll even get some lovely splatter marks. But when I'm painting big and loose, most of my movement comes from my shoulder. And I recommend standing up. It gives you a better view of the entirety of the painting, and also just makes it easier to use the whole arm. And you know what, while I'm at it, use your whole body to paint, if you can. That sounds really weird, I get it, but I have commented before that I'll often put on music while I paint, because if I'm putting on some like really upbeat, swinging music, well, the body starts to dance along. And that's fantastic, because then I am moving, I am upbeat, I am energetic, and I find that that comes through in my work. All right, going in, throwing a little more blue on that muzzle, because I really need to make sure to separate shapes from each other. That muzzle is going to be up against the side of the unicorn. And so when you're painting like a white subject, and a white area is against another white area, you're gonna have to go dark if you want to create that large degree of separation. And so you can tell from my painting, this still is a white unicorn, even though if you look at it, it's blue. It's blue, but because everything is blue and I left enough white for the light, and I end up using gouache at the end to paint in some of those mane hairs, it translates as, oh, this is a white unicorn, and it's just reflecting the shadows around it, because a white subject reflects the colors around it. Color really is just the reflection of light. And so that's what happens with light. It reflects what's around it. So because the background is blue and purple, the unicorn is painted with blue and purple, even though it is white. And I want to go ahead and throw in some other tips that unfortunately did not make it in the video. Although this one did. Notice the eye, I went and made it darker, and then I dragged some of that pigment around the eye, but I left that little bit of white gap, just itty bitty sliver of a gap, and that gives the illusion of there being a lower lid. And then I'm defining the jaw a bit more. Later I realize, oh, that jaw is way too close, and so I go in and I create a darker line to adjust the size of the face. And so watercolor has it's often thought of as being unforgiving, you can't fix mistakes. But if you have a good grasp of like color theory and value theory, I don't know about making a quote-unquote correction, but you can technically make a correction. Just go in with a stronger color and it will shift the shape. So a couple things that didn't make it into the video before I run out of time. I did use gouache at the end, but I didn't use it on any of the part of the unicorn that is white, so not anywhere on the body. I did use it to create the mane. And if you're going to use gouache, try and make the area that you paint the gouache on top of as dark as you can without ruining the painting. Because when painting white on top of something, if you want that white to stand out, it needs to be on something dark. The other thing I did is for doing the horn on this unicorn at the end, I pulled out some watercolor ground and just wung it. Once you put watercolor ground on your paper, that is something you really can't correct, so I did need to be pretty confident. And so one thing you can do for confidence is if you want to sketch, sketch. Or you can paint with an extremely light, almost imperceptible value, and then once that dries, if you like the shape, go on top of it with the ground because the ground will cover it. I chose watercolor ground for the horn because I wanted it to almost pop off the page. When I use watercolor ground, I use it really to create texture and visual interest. And note, watercolor does dry paler, so you might need to go into some areas a few times to get a nice varied contrast in your values. Don't be afraid to go bold. That stuff will dry up to 50% lighter. And here's the finished painting. If you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if you want to see more, subscribe because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.